the Retirement Cafe podcast. Rock your retirement planning in 2022. Hello and welcome to 2022 and to my podcast. I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas and celebrated the new year with those who matter to you most. The beginning of January is the time when so many of us make resolutions to do different things, to live our lives in different ways and make changes. Maybe we'll quit a bad habit or start something new, not least in the world of personal finance. So many people start the year with great intentions. They plan to pay off debt, save more for retirement, or get a grasp on their pensions maybe. But are these the right things to be tackling? It can be hard to create a plan for mastering your money if you're not really sure where your priorities lie. So in this episode, I want to make you aware of the big priorities when it comes to personal finance and specifically retirement planning. These are the things that you may want to tackle in 2022. It all starts with awareness. I aim to help you feel more aware of any planning issues you may have, aware of how things could be instead, and ultimately aware of what you can do to bring about the change that you want or need. I want this episode to be actionable and highlight the steps you can take to address any issues you might uncover. And for those of you who already feel on top of your money, this episode may serve as a sense check or checklist and make you feel confident in your retirement planning, or even a little smug for being so organized. So make yourself comfortable, and with Kathy's help, I aim to help you unpack a few ideas about retirement planning. Welcome, Kathy.
Hello. Good to be back.
Great. What have you got for me today?
Okay, so the retirement planning, I can be a little bit slopey-shouldered, but it's not passed me by that I'm getting a bit closer to 50 and I probably should be paying a bit more attention. So I'm wondering whether you can help me identify what those key things are that I need to be thinking about and looking at. So what would you say, what's up first?
Well, for anyone listening to this or watching us on YouTube, I think it's all about understanding, first of all, what we currently spend. And if you're single or a couple, what's going out on a regular basis. And therefore, what would continue to go out when we were retired, and maybe what wouldn't go out. So therefore, we get an idea, first of all, what we're spending currently, and that may also help us understand what we could save. And second of all, going, right, okay, out of the stuff that we've got going out at the moment, what would continue to go out? And maybe our lifestyles will change in retirement. We've got two reasonably young children at the moment. They'll have grown up and maybe we'll have more time to go on holiday. So therefore, our spending patterns may shift. So it's kind of just trying to look at where we are at now and how that might change in the future.
And what's the best way to kind of go about doing that? Obviously, you use some quite fancy software, don't you, to map that out for the people that we work with. But what about, if I was at home on my own, how should I go about doing that?
I mean, it is as easy as, well, there's a couple of ways you could do it. And awareness is really quite an empowering thing. So, you could just go and download your bank statement from the bank. I mean, you might still get one in paper form, but we get ours electronically, and you can download those into a spreadsheet. They often have most banks have a kind of facility where you can extract the data and then you just put it into a columns. That's all it needs, and tot it all up. And then you can go through it and maybe you can categorize it and go, okay, well, that's a discretionary spend. That's just kind of fun to do, or those are the key things that we need to know that you're going to have to pay the gas man, the electricity company, the boiler service, all those types of things you're going to continue to have to pay for now and in the future. The only point you're going to get out of paying that is when you're dead.
Great. That's a cheery topic. Brilliant. Okay, so we've got an idea of spending now and in the future. So that's great. So that's just setting aside a bit of time, really, isn't it, to do that exercise? What next?
Well, then you need to kind of look at, okay, so what have I acquired? What have I acquired so far? Have I got some pension savings and maybe some ISA savings? Have I got savings anywhere? It doesn't matter where they are, I don't care. But what have you saved so far? That might be in some old occupational pension schemes. It might have some defined benefit schemes. You might have some pensions from previous employers. often we get people coming to us with, 12, 14 different pensions and going, got all this stuff, this is a bit confusing. So trying to work out where stuff is, first of all, and knowing that you've got all the statements kind of in place and you know what they're worth is really key. The other benefit that we've covered many times before, and we've got some videos on this, of course, is understanding your state pension. This is the bedrock of your retirement income, and therefore you need to understand what that is as well. So what you're going to get, how much you've acquired so far, whether there's any gaps in your state pension history. So there's a few things, but lost pensions is huge. People kind of easily move on. Maybe you only spend 6 months or 3 months with a company, and you may have some pension accrual there that hasn't carried on with you. So just often an easy thing to do is maybe just go back in your history and think, who did I work for? And when I worked for them, where's that pension?
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy, isn't it? Like you said, it's really easy to lose track of things like that. And so is there, if someone's kind of going through that process and say, well, I used to work at this company and I don't seem to have, I don't seem to know where my pension is from that company, how can they go about actually trying to find out what they've got?
Well, there is a pension tracing service that if people have actually lost details, we'll put some information in the notes below the video and on the Retirement Cafe website for that in the show notes. If you kind of really can't find a company, and companies can go bust, of course, they can disappear or they get taken over, so it is easy to lose stuff. But once you've worked out, right, I've got all these different pots, I've got all these different plans with people. It's then trying to work out, well, what are they worth? I mean, how much are they actually, what are they worth today? And then, of course, what are they likely to be worth in the future?
Yeah, I mean, these, I know from looking at my own pension statements, they're not the easiest things to understand necessarily, are they? Because there's so many assumptions. They're assuming you're going to retire at a certain age, or you're going to start drawing the money at a certain age. They're assuming the growth on your your investments, and so many factors. And particularly if you're still quite a long way from retirement. I mean, how do you actually work out, how do you compare one with another? How do you kind of go, well, this one's saying I'm going to get, my pot will be worth this amount, and this one's looking at a different year and saying it'll be worth that amount. How do you get your head around that to make it meaningful?
Yeah, now you are getting to more trickier ground, and of course, this is the type of work that we do. And illustrations, I'm not a great fan of them because there's something inherently kind of wrong with predicting something even 10, 15 years in the future. And the growth rates that they've assumed on these illustrations, they're often assuming that you turn that pot of money into an annuity. That's kind of unlikely nowadays with low interest rates and high life expectancy for a lot of people. Not saying annuities can't be the answer, but they rarely are at the beginning of retirement. I think often enough they can be later on. So trying to just build up this pattern and go, okay, so if we knew what they all were worth today, I've got 5,000 in this one and 50,000 in this one and 100,000 in that one. Okay, so if I project them all forward at a relatively conservative rate, maybe 2 or 3% above inflation, what's that amount of money I'm going to have at my retirement age, or if at 57 or 59 or 63 or 68, depending on when you want to to draw on those pension savings. It doesn't actually mean retirement. A lot of people we know work part-time during their retirement. They work as consultants or they do different things. So it's just trying to work out what level of money will you have at different points of that later life, and trying to put a growth rate probably across all of them to say, look, they're all going to be a similar amount. It leads us on to the next thing, of course, which is if you've got money, if you've got some, let's say you've got a pension pot and there's £50,000 in that, and let's say they were both, you had two pension pots, A and B. And A's got 50,000 in, and you can get it at 65, and B's got it, and that's projected to give you some money at 65 as well. So you might think, well, okay, well, they're going to give us the same amount, and that would be a fair comment. But of course, what you've got to do is look underneath the hood and go, okay, well, actually, where are they invested? Because one might be in a really safety first kind of deposit fund, bond fund, etc., giving you a really cautious investment approach. And I remember that you may have chosen that investment approach, or it may have been chosen for you by your employer at the time. Or the default fund, maybe that could have been chosen 20 odd years ago. And then you may have the other pot, which you've gone, I've got to know when you made some decisions around that pot. And you maybe you understood investing a little bit better at that point because you weren't 22, that you were 42, and you invested that one in the great companies of the world, in the world stock markets, and you might say, well, okay, well, they're both likely to produce the same amount of return. Well, of course they're not, because they're actually invested in a different way and different places. So your expected return is going to be different.
Your pet topic, isn't it? It's one of your pet topics, one of your topics you're really passionate about helping people understand. So tell me a little bit more about that. What should people do about that now then? Take your 42-year-old, or your 42-year-old is now 52. And they're looking at these two different, pensions. What should they be doing to kind of firstly understand where they're invested, and secondly, maybe do something about that, so that does impact the return they will have in the future when they do want to retire?
So I'm a big fan of investing in equities. Our clients have a well-diversified portfolio across the great companies of the world, whose purpose in the world is basically to produce profits. And by being an equity holder, being a shareholder in those companies, you will get a benefit from being in those companies. As their earnings grow, you get a dividend, and the capital appreciation of those companies grow as well. So that's and if you think, if you're 42 or getting closer to 50, you've possibly got 30 odd years of retirement future, 40 odd years of retirement future ahead of you. In my book, the only place to be investing at that point is equities. Though lots of the kind of risk assessments and the fund choices that are available to people, especially in workplace pensions, they guide you through some kind of daft risk assessment, which basically then comes out, you come out as a balanced investor, or a cautious investor, or a medium risk investor, or whatever those things are. But actually, if you became a bit educated to look at what the returns of those types of funds have done historically, comparable to a global equity portfolio over the long term, you'd look at the two things and you'd just go, well, it's just obvious where I should be investing. But therefore you either need to do some learning around this subject to kind of really enhance your understanding of, where am I investing? What are these people doing with my money? And what's my chance of success here? Or you defer that and you kind of go, you go and see an advisor like myself and say, look, based on what I've got at the moment, what's the likely return that I'm going to get off this bag of pensions, or massive different pensions and savings pots that I've got? But I think learning to get educated, and maybe that's with the benefit of an advisor or just yourself, then you can start to understand, right, this is what I should get. This is what the return that I deserve for the investments that I'm making.
Yeah. Okay. And then presumably, people can contact their pension providers and make a change to the funds that they're invested in.
They can. Yeah. And the problem is with providers that they've all got some of the funds, I know that we've got some clients who've got ex-pensions with Scottish Widows and Standard Life, who are now called Aberdeen. And they've got so many funds available. I mean, thousands of darn funds available, that it's so difficult for an investor to kind of make a decision and make a choice and understand what they're really doing with the money. I mean, it comes back to my analogy again, the Sainsbury's wine aisle. I go and get faced with thousands and thousands and thousands of different bottles of wine on a Friday night that I can buy. And if I don't really know, I'm not a wine connoisseur, how do I know which one to do, or which one's going to serve me best? The beauty about buying a bad bottle of wine on a Friday night, it's a £6 or £10 or £20 mistake. The mistake that you may be making with a significant amount of your pension savings is just huge, because even if you think you're not making a decision today, You are, because not making a decision means you are making a decision. It's so worthwhile. Make 2022 the year that you look at your pension and go, right, I'm either going to understand this myself, or if I want to fast track this, I'm going to go and get a coach. I'm going to get a good advisor who can explain this stuff to me and give me some guidance of which choice I should make. It's like taking the sommelier to the wine aisle, going, I'm having roast beef tonight. What shall I drink with it?
Brilliant. Okay, good stuff. All right. So I've looked at my funds. I've looked where I'm invested. What else do I need to do?
Okay, so we've now got a number of things, haven't we? We understand what we need in retirement. This is the income we need. Remember, it's not about a capital sum, it's the income we need in retirement. We understand where our pensions are. We know what they're worth. We've then looked at what they're invested in, and from that, we can then make an expected idea of what the return is going to be. Just look back in history. It's a guide. It's not going to tell us the future. It's not a crystal ball, but you can go, okay, a global portfolio of equities has returned north of 10% per year on a long-term 30, 40-year investment return. Okay, well, that's pretty significant, but you've got to look at it in relation to what inflation is as well. And then you go, okay, well, if I got my money invested in that type of thing, and I assume maybe a more cautious investment growth rate, let's say 4 or 5% a year, what will that give me in the future? And then I've now got that future amount, and it can be as simple. It is a little bit more complicated because there's tax and there's lots of things to work out. But sometimes I break it down to a client and I say, look, let's just look at it. We've got lots of complicated calculations going on through retirement and state pensions coming in here and another pension coming in there. And that's got a guaranteed benefit and that's got spouses benefits and that one's index linked. And, there's a lot of complications going on. And by the way, your tax rate will be this and that, depending on how much cash you take, tax-free cash, and different things are going on. But of course, you could just turn around and go, if I've got £100,000 in my retirement savings pot at retirement, and I need £10,000 a year, in a very straightforward, excluding inflation for a second, because that's quite crucial, but excluding inflation's £100,000, £10,000 a year, it's going to last me 10 years. Okay, it gives me a ballpark, doesn't it? That it's good. If I've got 200,000, it's going to last me 20 years. 300,000, it's going to last me 30 years. Okay, now we're starting to get an idea of, have I got enough in my pot? Is it going to grow to enough? If it's not, of course, you then just go, how do I make it better? Well, I either make it better by getting a better rate of return on my investing. That's one of the levers we can pull, or contributing more, sticking more savings into that pot, deferring some of the purchases you were going to make today for future purchases when you're retired. Your future self will thank you for it.
Good stuff. Great. Okay. And so is there a way of people kind of working out, if they've got this gap, let's say their pension, let's say my pensions, my savings are going to provide for me for 20 years, but I want them to provide for me for 30 years. So I've kind of got this gap of, let's, for sake of argument, simple numbers, £100,000. How do I then kind of work out, how much to contribute, how much more I need to contribute, because you've got all the growth figures and things like that? Or do you just do it on a really simple basis of got to save another £100,000 over the next 20 odd years until I want to retire?
Yeah. So the first barrier we've got to overcome, of course, is this inflation figure. And we've got kind of inflation, hitting nearly 4% now, which really means, if you need £100 today to spend, you need £104 next year. And that will just keep compounding up. So at least we need to make sure that the £100 that you're putting aside today will grow at least by inflation. And the only way you can do that is look at it and go, what assets have continued beating inflation over the long term? Little inside secret there, it's equities, but beating inflation over the long term, and also has an opportunity to maybe even provide a better return than inflation. But I just work on a kind of conservative basis and think, okay, if I've worked out that I need £100 to spend in the future, and whatever future that is, 20 years, 30 years time, go, okay, I need to invest that £100. Now, the beauty of our pension system is that actually the government helps us out. They contribute more. And if you're with a benevolent employer, and in fact, even if you're in an auto-enrolled scheme and they're making the minimum contributions, you are getting some extra pay from your employer. we've got clients who are getting, they're matching the client's contributions. So the client pays 10% in and the employer pays 10%. Well,
Wow.
this is free money. This is just extra money. This is just suddenly by you saying, I'm going to save, they'll save for you. That's doubling your contribution. So,
and then on top of that, you've got your tax relief.
Tax relief as well. So all of a sudden, you've got this massive opportunity to turn, £60 maybe into £100 just by the tax relief. Now, all of a sudden you're saying, okay, well, I need to save £100 for a future spend because I need that money in the future. And I'm hoping that with a following wind that equity growth will at least meet inflation. So I know that if I stick away 100 quid today, it's 100 quid I can spend in the future. Now, of course, it will grow, but it's in real terms, it's £100 in real money that I can take to the supermarket and buy a basket of goods. So if my shopping is £100 a week now, I can go to the supermarket in the future whenever I get to that retirement date and go, right, I'm going to withdraw. Now we know, of course, in 30 years' time, we're going to need to withdraw more than 100, but I'm just going to presume that equities over the long term will have at least met inflation. So I will be able to go and buy still the same basket of goods. And I just work on that basis. And then if I'm going to dial that back and go, okay, well, I'm a basic rate taxpayer, the government's going to add £20. So that £100 is actually going to cost me 80. And if I'm a 40% taxpayer, that contribution is only going to cost me 60. Brilliant. And if my employer's contributing in as well, sometimes they'll then contribute the national insurance saving. Sometimes they'll make these additional savings. So therefore, it might only even cost £50. And all of a sudden, putting £50 in for that future spend of 100, you just look at the pension planning opportunity, and it's just vast.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. That's really broken it down in quite a simple way. So is there anything else I should really be thinking about as I edge that little bit closer to 50?
No, not really. I think just going through that understanding and becoming aware, becoming a grown-up here. We've just got to turn around and go, look, I should probably know this stuff. And so, even if you're so disinterested in it that you really can't be bothered, just go and get a good advisor. Just go and,
know any out there?
Of course we can help, but there are plenty of good advisors. I'd really look for someone who's a certified financial planner, as well as being a chartered financial planner, because they've been tested to a really high level. We can put a link in there where you can go and find a certified financial planner. You'll hear lots about chartered. I like chartered. I'm chartered myself, but I'm also certified, and the certified financial planning just illustrates that people can really help people do the planning aspect of this type of work. It's a bit like we could probably service, service our own lawnmowers or something. It's a standard 2-stroke engine. They're not too complicated. With a handbook, you could probably work it out. Alternatively, you may choose to just give it to someone to do and go, can you do that, and pay them to do it. Do the same with your planning exercise. One thing that I have noted recently, and we're going to cover this in a bit more detail, I know, in later episodes, but you can just go and get and pay a fixed fee for some planning advice. Therefore, we do lots of that work where we're not going to sell them investments, and we're not going to take over their pension plans, and we're not going to look after their money. So it's just they come along, develop me a retirement plan, bring all my stuff into place so I can see what's going on, tell me what I should do, tell me the type of assets I should invest in to get the return that I need when I hit that retirement day. A fixed fee retirement planning service is probably what you need to be looking for.
Good stuff. Great. Well, I've got plenty to be cracking on with. Thanks for that.
Yes, I look forward to our dinner party conversations.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you.
Well, thanks to you, Kathy, to help me explain my thoughts about how to make 2022 the year that you really rock your retirement planning. I hope you found our conversation helpful. If you have any questions that popped up for you as you've listened or as you've watched, if you'd like a second opinion on your financial plan, don't hesitate to get in touch with us and I'll do my best to answer. You can get me on my email at hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk or via Twitter at JustinKingCFP. And of course, my regulated financial planning practice, MFP Wealth Management. I've referenced a lot of other podcasts and videos in this episode, and you may want to listen to or watch to delve in more detail about certain topics. So check out our notes for all those links. As always, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help more people like you find us, or share this episode with someone you feel who will benefit. It really does help. It just leaves me to wish you a happy and healthy and really fulfilling 2022. And good luck with your retirement planning. So until next time, I'm Justin King, helping you feel more informed about your retirement.